headline number. One Nation has announced a major plan that would see $90 billion cut from government spending. Now, One Nation, unlikely to be in government after the next election, but they may well have a lot of power, particularly in the Senate. Senator Pauline Hanson joins me. Thank you, Pauline, for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks, Clinton, for having me on.
This, I think, is going to please a lot of our listeners. Where are you going to find $90 billion to cut, though?
All right. A lot of it comes from doubling up in departments. Let's start with the educational department, which actually is doubling up on education. Education should be back in the hands of the states to control, not the federal sphere. When you have bureaucrats running it from Canberra, not teachers. So let's stop the doubling up and look at that. A lot of money is going to come from the climate change. We're going to get rid of the climate change department and everything that goes with it. Climate change, what they're investing in, the government is going to invest over $65 billion by 2030 to increase renewable capacity. That's including powering the Australian plan and rewiring Australia plan. They've also put aside $19 billion, and that's for hydrogen, renewable hydrogen. Let me tell you, listeners, hydrogen does not work and will not work, nowhere near working. It costs you more in electricity to produce hydrogen, and to store it has to be around about 252 Celsius to actually minus 252 Celsius. So we're nowhere near it. To put this money out there is ridiculous. And also there's another $2 billion for the Hydrogen Head Start program. So when you're looking at the climate change department, a whole lot of it, even now they're putting in these Chris Bowen and his electric cars. They changed all the cars down in Canberra, them changing them over to electric cars, which cost around probably up to $100,000 per car. There's 80 in Canberra alone. They've only got 5 chargers there. They've put the cart before the horse. Now, it's not been well planned.
Say we're abolishing the Department of Climate Change. If you did have the ability to negotiate with either Labor or the Coalition to get legislation through Parliament, and they discuss that with you, would there be a pushback, particularly probably from the left or from Labor, to say, oh, no, we can't do that because we'll become pariahs on the international stage?
No, we've got to control our own country. I'll ask the people out there, has your electricity prices gone down under the renewables? Renewables only deliver about 30% of your power. A lot of now, they were paying you to put your power into the grid if you had solar panels on your roof. Now, in Queensland, they're charging you if you put it into the grid. So this is what's happening in South Australia and other states. They can't take the supply of all this power from the renewables. So you're going to have to put batteries on, which costs you a lot of money to put batteries on in place. The only way you can lower your power is the cheaper power is through coal and gas. Why it's become so expensive is they put the coal on in times when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine. So therefore they've got to bring the power plants back on. That costs you more to start them up all the time. If you had it going at a reasonable time, at a minimum amount of time, they'll be supplying the power that we need. Use your renewables if you need to, but don't keep turning them off and on. That's why they burn out the maintenance that needs to be done on them.
Pauline,
we can reduce the power prices by 20% immediately if we did that.
What about our international obligations? Now, I use that word obligations. We are part of the United Nations. We're part of the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the UN Refugee Convention. You are proposing that we withdraw from all of that. We would save $1 billion by doing that. But if we were to do that, we've got allies and, okay, let's just put America for one side at the moment because things are changing under President Trump. But how would we be able to talk with our allies about trade and other issues if we've said, no, we're not part of the UN anymore, no, we're not part of the UN Refugee Convention?
That's different to trade agreements that we do, okay? The United Nations is...
It's different to the trade agreements, but won't the UK, for instance, with Keir Starmer saying, hang on, we don't like the fact you're pulling out of the UN, we're going to renegotiate trade agreements?
That's got nothing to do with it. You have trade agreements with each country.
Yep.
That we can still do those trade agreements. What is the Refugee Convention that was done in the early 1950s that we're still under it now? Things have changed. We have to deal with bringing refugees in the country that suits us as the nation, not be told by other countries how many we've got to bring in. And the fact is that we per capita, bring in more refugees than any other country around the world. This has to be addressed because the cost to the taxpayer as well. It's okay to feel for these people and think we open up the floodgates. But when I see people living in cars, in tents, people who have a job and still can't afford to put a roof over their head. I'm sorry, I draw the line.
Oh, Pauline, you're getting a lot of support. Our listeners are texting in saying good on you for this. This is music to a lot of Australians' ears, that our money is going overseas on it like this. Just on some of the areas where you'd like to see some spending.
NDIS is another one, Aboriginal industry, that needs to be cut right back. If you treat everyone on an individual needs basis, not based on race, you will save near $25 billion plus a year.
Pauline, just on some of the issues where you want to spend some money, and just quickly too, petrol excise, and that's going to cost, but you want to cut petrol excise by half. Can you afford to do that?
We can. It was my instigating it for Morrison to do it for 6 months.
Yep.
I led that charge on that. He did it. Was there any difference to the economy? It's going to cost us $3 billion. If you don't cut fuel excise, that's where your cost of living. And that's why people are doing it hard out there. We can afford to do it. It's not going to affect not building roads or anything like that. I have seen the government waste that's gone on. Do you know that after The Voice, this government gave $10 million to the Aboriginal people for those people who were upset with with The Voice?
Yeah.
It's so much government waste, and it can be cut back.
There is plenty of areas to save money in, Pauline. Just lastly, and I've got to move on in a moment, Pauline, if you won't have the balance of power, obviously, in the lower house. And I know you'll run a lot of candidates in the lower house, but it's hard to see you having that ability to form a government with one of these major parties. But in the upper house, in the Senate, you're going to have a lot of power. Are you planning to sit down before the election with Anthony Albanese on one side, Peter Dutton on the other side, and discuss some of these initiatives?
I don't think they'll bother taking time to discuss it with me. A lot of policies I've brought out over the years, I know that they've picked up my policies over the years. The fact is that if we have that balance of power in the Senate, we then can push a lot of these issues with the government of the day. Don't underestimate the ability of One Nation, which we have done in the past when we had the balanced power under the Turnbull-Morrison government. We had a lot to say. I got a lot done for Australia. Don't underestimate our ability. It's up to the people now. You do not have to vote just for Liberal or the Labor Party. You can, and especially in the Senate, to vote for One Nation.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why the Senate's important, because there's zero chance either side's going to have majority in the Senate. And that's where they'll need your support, Pauline. Good luck. Thank you, Senator.
All right. Thanks, Clinton. Bye.
Senator Pauline Hanson, I've got so many text messages supporting Pauline. Look, she says it like it is. She wants to make big reductions in the amount of money we spend overseas. And then she wants to redirect that into areas like boosting Medicare, cutting petrol excise. Have you got a view on that? 1318